So, this is our beginner series where I break it completely down for beginners wanting to get into crochet. I know it can be very overwhelming. There's tons of stitches out there to learn. So, in the series I'm creating, we're just going to break it down literally step by step. We're going to do each individual stitch, a video devoted to that. We're going to learn how to read patterns. We're going to learn how to start amigurumi. So I hope you guys find this helpful, and go ahead and leave a comment for me down below telling me what it is you're struggling with, maybe a certain stitch, a certain pattern, or maybe let me know what kind of tutorials you guys are looking for. So let's jump right into it. So the first thing we're going to be learning today is how to do our foundational chain for a crochet project. Now, these could be for anything like wearables, blankets. It could involve some amigurumi too. Sometimes you have to start with a foundational chain for certain things with that. So we're going to dive right in. And the first thing I'm going to show you guys how to do is a slip knot to start your chain. And what I'm using here is an acrylic 4-weight yarn. And when you go yarn shopping, you'll see on the tag here, there's lots of information. Okay, so the weight of your yarn is right here. It'll have a ball and there'll be a number, and that'll be the weight. So there's different weights, like, there's 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, 5, 6, which is like jumbo yarn. But we'll get into yarn weights and sizes in a different video. I just wanted to explain. And I'm just using Red Heart, size 4, in the color Aruba Sea. And then I'm also using a 5.5 millimeter crochet hook, or in size I. And I like to use the Clover brands. But we're going to do a separate video talking about hooks, hook sizes, yarns, all that stuff. So right now we're just going to worry about your foundation chain. I really recommend for beginners when starting out using a bigger hook size, like a 5.5 millimeter or a 6 millimeter, which is also a size J. I think the bigger hooks make it a lot easier when you're first starting out to see your stitches. When we get with the smaller hooks, it makes our stitches a lot tighter, and it's a lot harder to see and get those hooks in those stitches. So when we do our foundational chain, what we're going to do is make a slip knot. So this is how I make my slip knot. I take the end of my yarn here, put it in this hand. I take 2 fingers and I just wrap it around and cross it over. And then I take the loop off my fingers. So you kind of made a loop here with this tail yarn out to the wayside. You're going to come in between this loop and pull that working yarn through to tighten. And if you've done it correctly, this is how you know you've done it correctly. When your tail yarn is to the wayside, when you put your hook into the loop and you pull it with your working yarn, which is the yarn connected to the skein, it should tighten the loop. When you pull the working yarn, it'll tighten the loop. That's how you know you've done your slip knot correctly. So I'm going to do that again. So we're going to take our tail yarn in one hand, take 2 fingers, we're going to wrap it from the back of our fingers towards the front and cross it over here to make a loop. Pull that loop off our fingers while we're still pinching this here where we made the loop. Then we're going to come in and we're going to pull that working yarn through that loop we just made to tighten. And once we have a slip knot, we can then take our hook, we're going to put it in our loop, and we're going to just pull that working yarn to tighten. Now, I suggest as a beginner, don't pull this and tighten it too much because it'll make it harder for you to get your hook through the loops here. So just tighten it a fair amount to where it's not just gonna like, super loose like this, like flopping around your hook. You just want it tight enough to where it still slides, but you can still easily get that hook out of that loop. Okay, so now we're going to start with our foundation chain. Now, what I like to do, and I didn't do this when I was a beginner, I didn't have a correct, quote unquote, way to hold my yarn for tension. Because the biggest thing when you're learning how to crochet is getting that tension correctly. It prevents your stitches from being wonky or tight on one end and then super loose on the other end, and it just not looking nice and flat and neat. So this is how I hold my yarn, and hopefully this translates well in the video for you. So first I take my pinky with my working yarn, come from behind it. I wrap it around my pinky like that, bring it up to my finger, and just wrap it around my finger. Just like that. So I'll do that again. I wrap it around my pinky and then up around my finger that I'm working with. And this just helps keep tension on your yarn. You'll learn as a crocheter that every crocheter has different tension. Some crocheters crochet tighter, some crochet looser. It all just depends on how you work. And we'll also go over more about tension when we do our video on yarn weights and yarn hooks, because that goes along with that. Okay, so now that we've got our yarn held, we're going to start with a foundation chain. Now, when you make a foundation chain, you've got your hook and your slip knot that we made. So what we're going to do is we're just going to yarn over. So we want our hook over our yarn like this. We're just going to grab that yarn with our hook, and we're going to twist it to pull through to make our first chain. Again, we're going to have that hook over our yarn. We're going to grab onto the yarn with the hook, and then we're just going to pull it down, keeping that yarn caught on the hook to pull through our chain. And let's do that again. We're going to grab onto our yarn with the hook and pull through the chain. Hook the yarn and pull through to make a loop on our chain. And hopefully this lighting is good. Let me see if I can make it any better so there's no shadow. Okay, so let's do that again. We have our hook through our loop. We have our working yarn to the side. Put the hook over the working yarn over to grab the yarn with the hook, and pull it through our chain. And we're going to keep doing that for as long as the pattern calls for. So say you're making a blanket and the blanket tells you to chain 175. You're going to do this and you're going to make 175 of those chains. Sorry. So we would do that by, when we start, we just 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. When we're making that foundation chain for a project, anything like that. Now, I find it easier to count as I go, as I'm making chains, but there is a way that you can count your stitches. So I'm going to chain a few more because I'm going to show you guys how to see and count your stitches when you're making a foundation chain, in case you lose track. One of the biggest things when crocheting and doing different projects is making sure your counts are correct, because if they're not correct, we could start out with a really perfect piece with a long chain, and then it kind of starts to taper in and our blanket gets smaller and smaller. And that's what happens when you miscount and then lose stitches, or vice versa. The blanket will start out nice, neat, and flat, and it'll just get bigger and bigger and bigger. And that happens when you're adding too many stitches. So let's take a look at our foundation chain that we've made so far. And the way that you can count is you're going to count the V's of your chain, or you can even take your hook and see wherever we have a loop. So that's 1, that's 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. And you can use your hook to help you count, like I said, going through each loop. If you're an extreme beginner and you're having trouble looking at the chain and figuring out like how to count, there's also little bumps back here when we make our chain. And you can also count these bumps here, because each little bump, I'm going to hold it up and see if it'll focus for you guys. Each little bump is where we made a chain. So this is the front, right, where we did our chain. If you flip it and see those bumps here, hopefully this makes sense. 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. If you guys have any questions and need me to clear something up or explain it a little better, just let me know in the comments and I can tweak the video and help cater it to you guys of what makes it easier and less confusing. This is also my first ever video doing a tutorial, so I'm just trying to figure out, the best way to do that and how to properly have a setup that you guys can see well and how to explain things. So I hope that I explained it well for you. I hope you understand the concept. Let's try it again. I'm going to show you a few more times and then we're going to talk about what we're going to do next. So again, we have our hook through our loop. We're going to come up here, yarn over, catch the yarn with the hook. Then I like to twist the hook a little just to make sure the yarn doesn't fall off, and pull it through. Yarn over, catch that yarn, twist the hook just to keep that yarn on, and then pull through our stitch, pull through our loop. And we're going to keep doing that. And what I want everybody to do, I would like you to work on your chains, and we're going to work on chaining 25. Because the next video we're going to see how to make the single crochet stitch. And we're just going to make a little square, and that's going to be your first project. It's just a little acrylic square. And we're going to show you how to turn on your rows so you can keep a clean stitch count, and we're going to work on the single crochet stitch. And our little square is just going to be different stitches. So I hope that this tutorial was clear for you guys. I hope it was helpful. Please let me know in the comments if it was helpful and how I did for my first tutorial. If there's anything I can improve on, please let me know in the comments or shoot me a message and we can talk that way. Thank you guys very much for watching my video. Please don't forget to click like and subscribe if this was helpful for you, and share my video, and that really will help my channel and help me get my tutorials out there to hopefully help other beginners. All right, bye guys.